right. So we're going through the Gospel of Shree Ramakrishna, and we are on, well, it's always hard to say. November 26th, 1883. And he was talking to Vijay, remember? And he asked Vijay, have you found your room? Have you found your room? Have you kind of found a place where you can take refuge and then go out? He was talking about a holy man who goes to a town and checks into his room in the hotel first and leaves all of his luggage and sets everything down and then goes out and enjoys the town. And, he was making kind of an allusion to that in spiritual life, before we go out and enjoy the world, we should go find our room, find the room in the hotel, where you can put everything down, your refuge, your home within yourself. And then you can, from that vantage point, go out and enjoy the city. And now he's going and telling a second story about the Avadhuta who had the 24 gurus in the Bhagavata. And he tells this story. He says it's narrated in the Bhagavata that the Avadhuta had 24 gurus, one of whom was a kite, a bird, like a raven, right? So it's interesting because the 24 gurus, this is also something I really enjoyed. Like there was a fire was one of them, and a bird was one of them, and a cow was one of them. And from all these different gurus, he was taught. And it was because of this story. Actually, that's not true totally, because there was one time I went out to the beach one time in college, and I asked the waves to teach me. So I guess that was a little bit before that. But this idea of, if you are in the presence of God all the time, if you are aware of that and you start living with that perspective, and you really begin focusing on the idea that the divine is everywhere present and always perfect, if you start living that and knowing that to be true, you can sit in silence in front of anything and have it become a teacher to you. And the way that I've played with this, and I've gotten a lot from it, actually, is to go and just, like when I went up to Founder's Grove, where all the big giant redwoods are, when you're walking amongst trees that are almost 400 feet high and 35 feet in diameter, it's like that redwood forest is so silent, and there's no underbrush in there. And these trees have been growing there for up to 2,500 years. They've been there. And so the forest floor is thick with needles. So it's like walking on a mattress. And because no light can get down there, there's no underbrush down there and not much wildlife. So it's dead silent because of that mushy ground and because of no animals, no underbrush. And these ancient trees, you really get the sense of being in a temple. And, I just going up and putting your hand on a living being that has been standing in that same place for over 2,000 years, and just letting your mind settle into that thought, the feeling of awe that you have in the presence of such a being, and kind of the staggering humility that you understand standing in the presence of a being that has found contentment and a reason to thrive without ever moving from its space, just standing there for over 2,000 years, was amazing. And I remember just sitting there and keeping my hand on it and just saying to it in my mind, teach me, teach me. And then just being quiet, not thinking, not letting the mind make up a teaching, not that way, but sitting in silence until from before mind, something comes up from inside of you, an understanding. And it usually doesn't come through language necessarily. It comes as a complete idea somehow. I don't really know how it works, but and you get, at least it seems to me like you actually can be in conversation with the world around you, if you have a quiet mind and if you silence that inner noise. And so I've done that. And here in this story of the Avadutta Gita here, where there's 24 gurus, he goes out. I think this is the one where he's sent out by his guru to increase his cows to 1,000, and he's not allowed to come back to the guru until he's increased the guru's cows to 1,000. But while he's out there, he's taught by all of these different things, these different animals and plants and whatnot. So one of the 24 gurus was this bird, a kite, it's called. In a certain place, the fishermen were catching fish. A kite swooped down and snatched a fish. At the sight of the fish, about 1,000 crows chased the kite and made a great noise with their cawing. Whichever way the kite flew with the fish, the crows followed it. The kite flew to the south, and the crows followed it there. The kite flew to the north, and still the crows followed after it. The kite went east and west, but with the same result. As the kite began to fly about in confusion, lo, the fish dropped from its mouth. The crows at once let the kite alone and flew after the fish. Thus, relieved of its worries, the kite sat on the branch of a tree and thought, that wretched fish was at the root of all of my troubles. I've now gotten rid of it, and therefore I'm at peace. Right? And can anybody tell me what this story means? I think everybody knows, just nobody wants to say it.
Desire.
Could be renunciation.
Desire.
Yes, exactly. Renunciation. It's holding on. It's what we looked at the other day when we were looking at the fulfilling of desires, and how Ramakrishna was saying, be careful of your desires, because, or was it Vivekananda, or was it? I don't remember what we were reading. Anyway, where it said, fulfilling a single desire is never a packaged small thing. That fulfillment of a desire has a long line of samskaras that go along with it, a whole long line of cause and effect that will follow it. And so be very careful about what desires you pursue and what ones you fulfill, because that's how you get entangled. And this is what the story is about here. It's about getting entangled in the world by grabbing something you want from the world, and then you've got all kinds of problems. I told that story not too long ago. I used to walk up and down Broadway in San Francisco, which is called Billionaires Row for a good reason. And I would walk by these beautiful houses, and never really bothered me. It never really made an impression. I just enjoyed the flowers and stuff because they always had beautiful gardens. I was walking along one day, and that desire came up. I was like, I felt a little bit of a desire to own, but my mind kind of went into what it would be like to own a place like that. And I'd been in the monastery for a few years, and I was like, whoa, 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 what is that? How come that's never arisen before? And so I thought, and I just went through the practice, where Thakur says to freeze your desire and look at it very carefully and consider what it would be. And I thought, well, gosh, if you move into a house like that, you're going to have a faucet of money running 24/7 in the basement just to pay the taxes on that house for a year. And then just think, for you to have work that can allow you to live in that place, that means you've probably hired at least 1,000 people. 1,000 people who now you're responsible for. Your company and how well it does is feeding these 1,000 people. And then you've got a staff of gardeners and kitchen workers and, repairmen and people redoing the floors or whatever. You've got all of those people to worry about and all those tasks to take care of, plus the company that you're running. And I thought, good Lord, never mind. I'll take my dorm room any day. Forget that. And that's what this story is about. It's the story of what happened to Adam and Eve, to rehash that out. You go out through the senses for your satisfaction, you're going to have to work the rest of the days of your life to fulfill your desires. That's the nature of it. And so be careful about your desires. Be discerning about your desires. And don't just blindly run after them, thinking that fulfilling them takes care of them. Fulfilling them creates a need for more. That's the nature of desire. And so think carefully. And so the crow here learns that lesson. He drops his fish that he was enjoying so much or wanted to enjoy so much and didn't get it back. And, you know, when it dropped, he saw that everybody that was bothering him found was after the fish. And he was like, what a bother. That fish was at the source of all of my troubles. And now I'm free. You know, so that's renunciation. When you understand that your desires have been the root of all of your trouble, and then you renounce them, and everything is instantly clearer for you. You're like, whoa, wow, God, all of that for that? That's amazing. That's crazy. You know? All right. The Avadutta learnt this lesson from the kite, that as long as a man has the fish, that is, worldly desire, he must perform actions and consequently suffer from worry, anxiety, and restlessness. No sooner does he renounce these desires than his activities fall away and he enjoys peace of soul. Right? He enjoys the peace of the soul because when you throw away the desires, that's the same as saying rooting out me and mine from the mind. And you attain that holy silence inside, the quiet of the mind. And that inner shrine, then you become aware of that constant bliss, that constant peace. And so that's what the peace of the soul that you get to enjoy. When you renounce desires, the mind begins to calm. You stop running after things of the senses. Inside, you know that you're separate from the mind and separate from the body, and you experience that stillness. That is the peace of your soul. And so the way to find this is through that, through discernment of your desires, leading to that renunciation, that dispassion, and then to renunciation. You know, so it's a process. You can't force it out before it's time for it to go out. You have to do the discernment first. You have to see the nature of your desire. You have to understand what is it in that object that I think I want. And you have to understand that that's separate from that object and abstract it out. It will always be a name of God, right? And so you abstract that out and you hold on to that truth and you renounce the objects and you go into the shrine to God to get the name of God that was flashing or being reflected in that object that attracted you. So let the activities fall away and enjoy the peace of soul. But work without any selfish motive is good. Okay? So it's not just the world at large that you get rid of. It's how you're living in the world that you get rid of. You know, with setting up things of desires and things of aversion. You know, letting go of that notion and accepting everything that comes to you in the moment as it is. But work without any selfish motive is good. It does not create any worry, but it is very difficult to be totally unselfish. We may think that our work is selfless, but selfishness comes unknown to us from where no one knows. But if a man has already undergone great spiritual discipline, all right, so this is how we overcome that selfishness. This is how we lose that sense of me and mine, which, you know, in a body, when you're identified by body and mind, everything in the relative world is measured from you, from the body, from you, the body, or you, the mind. So you are literally the center of your world. Very hard to break that fact. Very hard to escape that seeming truth as long as you're attached to the body and mind. It's not until you find that separate self within and begin to delineate its separateness for the time being from body and mind. It's only at that time that the world will take its place. So it's that great spiritual discipline of that interior work of finding out who you are in there. What part of my existence am I? What am I? So if a man has already undergone great spiritual discipline, then as a result of it, he may be able to do work without any selfish motive. right? That's to do work in the moment. That's pure karma yoga. That's to be purely in the moment and doing work for its own sake, not to achieve or gain or grab anything, but simply just living in the joy of being, living in the joy of being. It makes me think again of that sadhu whose only practice was to watch the waterfall every day, all day long, looking at it and seeing it for the first time over and over and over again, and letting that awe just praise. Great, beautiful mother. What a beautiful, oh, just an overwhelming job you've done on this waterfall. And that was his whole practice, just to sit and to deeply appreciate a waterfall. Yeah, so that's karma yoga. It's just taking the moment, no matter how mundane it may seem to the mind. Take the moment as new and fresh, as if you're seeing it for the first time. And then everything in the moment is magic. Everything in the moment is profound and deep and delightful. And so this is that dancing in the moment, working from your nature and not from the desires of the mind or body. You've withdrawn yourself, your identity, from body and from mind. So they're not dictating to you all the time, right? Like they do. If you sit down and keep track of your desires in a day, you'll see that every single one of them comes from the body or the mind. None of your desires arise from the self, from the watcher. And that's how you know that the watcher is content, even your own. After the vision of God, a man can easily do unselfish work. Easily do. Yeah, because that vision of God you never forget, because it doesn't come in through the senses. It comes in through the back door. It comes in as a full experience already. It doesn't need to be described to the body or to the mind through the senses, and that it doesn't have to be interpreted to you, the watcher. It's a direct experience. That's what Swami Prabhupada said. That's how you know whether a vision is real or not. He says, if the vision was real, you'll be changed by it, and it will be as fresh in your mind 20 years later as it was the day it happened, because it's not a memory. It's a giving of the reality through the back door, avoiding the senses, avoiding the mind, and just coming into a direct experience of isness. So after this vision of God, a man can easily do unselfish work. In most cases, action drops away after the attainment of God. Only a few, like Narada, work to bring light to mankind. That's the Buddhist idea of bodhisattvas, and the ever perfect. Whenever an incarnation, whenever God decides to incarnate again, he always brings a handful of his helpers with him. And they're always the disciples that are around him, the people that are around him that help him unfold his play. And so several times when you're reading the gospel, you'll find Ramakrishna saying, "Oh, you were with Krishna. You were one of the cowherd boys." And he turned to another one and says, "Oh, you two were with Jesus. You came when I came as Jesus." And so all of this group of beings who have dedicated themselves to you and me in a way, in the sense that they won't cross over into union. They won't be absorbed into that one without a second. Out of service, they keep coming back into the world and to keep giving us more light, to giving us better vision, more teachings that are appropriate to the time and space that we're in, to try and give us the better opportunity to transcend our desires, to transcend our small mind. The Avadhuta accepted a bee as another teacher. Bees accumulate their honey by days of hard labor, but they cannot enjoy their honey, for a man soon breaks the comb and takes it away. The Avadhuta learned this lesson from the bees, that one should not lay things up. Sadhus should depend 100% on God. They must not gather for the morrow, but this does not apply to the householder. He must bring up his family. Therefore, it is necessary for him to provide. Birds and monks do not hoard, yet birds also hoard after their chicks are hatched. They collect food in their beaks for their young ones. Let me tell you one thing, Vijay. Don't trust a sadhu if he keeps a bag and baggage with him and a bundle of clothes with many knots. I have seen such sadhus under the banyan tree in the Pachavati. 2 or 3 of them were seated there. One of them was picking over lentils. Some were sewing their clothes, and all were gossiping about a feast that they had enjoyed in a rich man's house. They said amongst themselves, the rich man spent 100,000 rupees on that feast and fed the sadhus sumptuously with cakes and sweets and so many delicious things. Of course, everybody laughs, right? Because that's the antithesis of being a sadhu, being a wandering monk, uh, in India. It's like, so it's just saying that it's not what you do in this life that identifies you. It's how you do it. Very important distinction. So you have householders that live and grow like monks. They have that interior space and they do that work and they use their household and their finances as service to the community around them. And then you've got monks, that play pool and let me list all my bad habits. But that you can be a worldly person and live in a monastery. It's not living in a monastery that makes you what you are. It's not living in a house that makes you what you are. It's your heart that makes you what you are. It's your being, your sense of being, what you think you are, what you think around the world around you is, and how you act in it. That is how you know a monk. That's how you know a saint. That's how you know a seer, right? Is by that, not by office, but by being, by how they are in the world. Vijay, it is true, sir. I have seen such sadhus at Gaya. They are called Lotawala sadhus of Gaya, right? The Lotuwala sadhus means the sadhus carrying water pots, carrying things with you. The idea for the wandering monk is that God takes care of all of your needs. You don't store up. If you don't accept 2 sandwiches so that you can eat one later, you have faith that mother will give you a sandwich later in the same way that she gave you a sandwich now. And so that's really living on the edge. In faith, that's where faith really becomes real, where you don't lay up anything. You do not provide for yourself out of faith that mother will provide, that God will provide for you. And Peace Pilgrim is a great example of that in the way that she lived. She just walked out of her house one day and took nothing with her except a comb, a pen, and a little notepad in her apron pocket. And she walked back and forth across the country, I don't know, 80,000 miles or something like that, speaking only of peace. And she chronicles that, and she shows that mother provided for everything. She had only 2 rules. She said, I will walk until I'm given shelter, and I will fast until I'm given food. Those were her 2 commitments. She never asked, never searched. And she says some days I had to sleep under a bridge, but then she tells some wonderful, wonderful stories that happened to her during that whole time. Such a touching story. You get her book for free online. There's a society of people that have formed around her teachings. And all you do is just fill out the form on their website and they'll send you as many books as you want. And they will not accept donation. They will not accept money for it. So you have to just accept it as a gift. So this is the ideal of monasticism. And really, this is an ideal for everyone, but householders are allowed to lay up, allowed to save because you've got family to feed. You've got children, you've got husbands and wives running around out there, and you're responsible for the community around you. That's one of the things that I love about the householder ideal, is it's so clear there that householder doesn't mean that you didn't become a monk. You know? So many times we have that idea. It's like, oh, you either become a monk or you're just a householder. Well, no, that's not the case at all. Both of those are spiritual paths, and both of those are chosen paths. And both of those paths lead to God, lead to unity with the divine. And that the path of the householder is such a noble path. And, of course, as a monk, I depend on it. If everybody was a monk, we'd have some very hungry monks running around. And so, of course, that's a ridiculous thing to say. But anyway, uh, this notion of the householder, that you can making money is your dharma. Doing well at your job, getting promoted, moving ahead in the world, that's your dharma. But it's not for your own selfish desires. You take care of your needs and your family's needs, and then you take care of your extended family's needs, and then you take care of your spiritual community's needs, and then you take care of your society. That you are the caretakers of society, and that's a very, very powerful responsibility to be given for a householder. And through doing that work properly, through that selfless service and the practice of service like that, and not considering your fruits of action to be your own, that's as much of a path, as difficult of a path as monasticism, I think. Someone asked me one time, what is harder, being a monk or being a householder? And I said, well, I think that it's harder to be a monk, because your discipline has to be absolute at times. And I said, but I think it's more painful to be a householder, because you have to live in the middle of all these things and renounce and discern and keep yourself from getting stuck or getting caught in the whirlpool. And so I think for householders, it's a more painful path, but through that pain you grow and learn. And I think that's how that path works. The hard path, to me, from looking, and I think everybody would have their own answer because it depends on a disposition. But when I looked at the monastic life and all that renunciation and all that, what I went in the early days that I perceived as boredom, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this for the rest of my life? So that was my answer to that question. But each part is there, and there is an equal respect, I think, to be paid to the householder who's living the life, like Janaka, always held up in the scriptures as the householder that realized God. Uh, that a householder's life lived dharmically is as beautiful as any monk living his life dharmically. It's the power of the divine that makes it beautiful, and both paths have to surrender and become manifestations of that divine oneness, that divine spirit in there. So these Lotawala sadhus, these sadhus that are laying up and just talking about worldly things, the master to Vijay, when the love of God is awakened, work drops away of itself. If God makes some men work, let them work. It is now time for you to give up everything. Renounce all and say, O mind, may you and I alone behold the mother, letting no one else intrude. Right? So this beautiful notion, he's talking to Vijay because he has indicated that Vijay has something has awakened in Vijay. Something has come up, because he looked at Vijay and said, you found your room. He could see it in his face. You could see it in the freedom in his face. And now he's telling him, he says, when the love of God is awakened, work drops away of itself. The time has come, my boy. He's saying, if God makes some men work, let them work. Yes, there are others out there, Vijay, but it is now time for you to give up everything, to walk away. You know the nature of it. You've seen, you've tasted the divine. Now make that move, make that decision. It is now time for you to give up everything. Renounce all and say, O mind, may you and I alone behold the mother, letting no one else intrude, right? Just mind and you, no desires, No mind waves, no thought waves, no company. There is nothing else being sought but the Divine Mother at that point. So, oh mind, come on, just you and I. Let's go see the Mother. Let's not look at anything else. Let's not be satisfied with anything else. Let us go there. Saying this, Sri Ramakrishna began to sing a song in his soul enthralling voice. So just picture Ramakrishna singing this to you. Cherish my precious mother Sayama tenderly within, O mind. May you and I alone behold her, letting no one else intrude. O mind, in solitude enjoy her, keeping the passions all outside. Take but the tongue, that now and again it may cry out, O mother, mother. Suffer no breath of base desire to enter and approach us there, but bid true knowledge stand on guard, alert and watchful evermore. Greg put this to music. Cherish my precious mother Shyama, tenderly within, O mine. May you and I alone behold her, letting no one else ever intrude, letting no one else ever intrude. O mind, in solitude, enjoy her. Okay, I'm all over. Anyway, like that, we'll sing it sometime with a piano. But just to having that kind, can you imagine just singing that song as you walk into the shrine? You know, cherish my precious mother Shama, tenderly within, O wandering mind. Yes. So that's the master says, befriend the mind, you know, and then take your mind on an adventure into spiritual life instead of your mind taking you on an adventure into worldly life. Yeah. You take charge. Don't let the body and mind determine your life. You turn your life, determine your life. You take the reins of your karma in the moment. The master said to Vijay, surrender yourself completely to God. God, I would get, can you just imagine what Vijay must be going through right now? I mean, he's already become aware of that wonderful divine spirit. He's there. And master comes to him. God comes to him. You're a realized soul. You know, the master comes to him and says, you found your room. Now give up everything. The time has come for you to renounce it all and to take your mind and go find the mother alone. I mean, can you imagine the chills that would be going through his body, the power that is being released at that moment as the divine incarnation is looking you in the eyes and saying, it's your time to go and renounce everything. What an amazing, amazing moment.
But Vijay's life took another turn, I think, Maharaj.
Oh, well, we'll get to that.
Yeah, he went separately,
Yes.
formed a group and everything. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, these things happen. But that they happen by design purpose, by divine purpose. So it's all an unfolding of something. So Vijay's master says to Vijay, surrender yourself completely to God. Set aside all such things as fear and shame. Beautiful. The first things he mentions of putting down, the first two things to renounce are your fear and your shame. Those are the first two things that you lay down. Lay down your fear and your shame. Give up such feelings as, what will people think of me if I dance in the ecstasy of God's holy name? The saying, one cannot have the vision of God as long as one has these three: shame, hatred, and fear. Right? Those are the three things that block your vision of God, that prevent you from seeing the divine in yourself or in others, or experiencing God in the world. These three: shame, right? Shame. Shame is when you actually identify with the wrong that you've done, you know, where you actually define yourself by it. And there's a shame in that. Hatred. You know, hatred is fear, but the fear from the other side, actually. Hatred is wanting the downfall of others, for whatever reason. And then fear, right? That fear is natural to us in bodies, in minds, because we're very vulnerable, we're very small. But in our nature, that fear drops away when we come to realize our immortality, our untouchability, that we are that eternal one without a second. So one cannot have the vision of God as long as these three exist in them: shame, hatred, and fear. It is very true. Shame, hatred, fear, caste, pride, secretiveness, and the like are so many bonds. Man is free when he is liberated from all of these. And interestingly enough, as if you look at that garden story again, the story of the Garden of Eden, you see each one of these bonds gets added to Adam and Eve as that act of going out through the senses and defining themselves through the eating of the knowledge, the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And we see that each one of these bonds takes over. Their first one, God is walking in the day and they're afraid, they run and hide. So fear. Then they realize they're naked and they're ashamed, so shame comes. And then just one after another, these things fall into place. But you're liberated, you're free when you let go of these things, letting go of shame, hatred, fear, caste, which means position in life, a good family, bad family, pride in your accomplishments, in your good looks, in your whatever mother has given you, secretiveness, doing things behind the scenes so that you don't get caught or you don't get seen doing them. So you're indulging in vices that you don't want to be associated with you. And the like, these are so many bonds, but man is free when he is liberated from these. So he mentions that because this is where we're going. We're going to freedom from these things. We don't bemoan their bondage. We keep our eyes on our freedom. We're going to be free. When bound by ties, one is jiva, right? So when the Atman is bound by these ties to this particular body mind, it becomes jiva, the embodied soul. And when free from ties, one is Shiva, right? You are the universal at that point, the universal self. Shiva, the great renouncer, dancing in the graveyard. So this notion of letting go of all attachments. So when you're bound, you're a jiva, you're an individual soul. But when you've renounced and you're free, you find your liberation, then you're Shiva. You have that universal access. You're no longer a particular. When one is free from ties, one is Shiva. Prema, ecstatic love of God, is a rare thing. First of all, one acquires bhakti. Bhakti is single-minded devotion to God, right? Single-minded, that means all of your desires run toward the divine. And it doesn't mean you have to sit in a cave and just think about the desire for God all the time. That means in whatever you're doing in the moment, you're doing it as an offering for the beloved. It's a single-minded awareness. Brother Lawrence working in the kitchen is an example of this. Just that single-minded awareness of God. That is bhakti, right? It's single-minded devotion to God, like the devotion a wife feels for her husband. It is very difficult to have unalloyed devotion to God. Through such devotion, one's mind and soul merge in him. Right? So this is the means of merging, is this one pointed thought, love, all flowing toward God. That infinite flow of love that you've got inside is just continually flowing out in an expression to God by your service of God in everything that you see, everything that you taste, touch, hear, or smell. Everything is God to you. And so everything is constantly getting your blessing, constantly getting your blessing. I learned when I was down in New Mexico, I wanted to go out and pick some pieces from the desert. And the Indians, they would pick those things, but they would always first acknowledge the bush, acknowledge the effort that went into growing that twig, then ask the bush's permission, and then they would take them, take their flower, take their book, take whatever they're going to do, or Killing an animal was the same process. And so it was always maintaining that sacredness, understanding all of these things. And so this living in the world with that one pointed devotion is that same kind of expression. Any form of taking would prick you inside, and you would immediately turn to God and go about that offering, going about that appreciation, going about, getting that permission and moving, because you've given God your, what is it? The Girish gave him his power of attorney. So Girish couldn't do anything without the permission of God. And Girish said he got tricked. He said, he said, he said, if I'd known what I was doing when I gave him my power of attorney, I would never have done it. Because he grew into it. He learned, oh my God, that means I can't even take a breath without the thought of God. First of all, one acquires bhakti. Bhakti is single-minded devotion to God, like the devotion a wife feels for her husband. It is very difficult to have unalloyed devotion to God. Through such devotion, one's mind and soul merge in the divine, in him. Then bhava comes, intense love, right? The lid has come off. Now you know your nature, you've seen God, you've tasted God, and now that's a torrent. It's when it expresses, it overwhelms the body, short circuits the mind. Then comes bhava, intense love. Through bhava, a man becomes speechless. Just, it's you've seen people at the top of the hill of a roller coaster on that first big hill, and they go down. On your first roller coaster ride ever, at least for me, I went down. I screamed for like the first half a second, and then my mouth was just wide open, and I couldn't say anything. I was just like, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I was like, and then when I got to the bottom, I started screaming again. That is bhava. That is, except for not fear, it's that love trying to express in a torrent that's too big for the body, too big for the mind, and it just leaves you, the body mind, completely just paralyzed. That's what ecstasy was with Ramakrishna. That was bhava. When he would go into that state, the body didn't work anymore. He wasn't there. He wasn't present there. He had become all things. He was everywhere in that room at that moment. He was not a body anymore. He was not a place. He was not a particular. He was everywhere present in that moment. He was in every devotee. He was in every picture on the wall. He was in the river running by outside. His body completely just inadequate for being able to express the enormity of the love of God, just freezes, gives up, and the soul joins everything for a brief moment. The soul dances with everything. Yes. Through bhava, a man becomes speechless. His nerve currents are stilled, right? They're really just overrun. Kumbhaka comes by itself. It is like the case of a man whose breath and speech stop when he fires a gun. But prema, ecstatic love, is an extremely rare thing. Chaitanya had that love. When one has prema, one forgets all outer things. Literally forgets. You are so enthralled with the experience of your divine nature, the experience of God within, so enthralled that you literally forget the entire world of the senses, the entire world that you called external. You completely forget it. When one has prema, one forgets all outer things. One forgets the world. One even forgets one's own body, which is so dear to a man, right? We forget our body. That's one thing I can honestly say I've never forgotten. It might be the only thing. But yeah, just think of how powerful that is. and how what an experience of who you are that would be. You know, it's one thing to go in and discern that you're not the body and you're not the mind, right? But to become so aware of your nature, so aware of what you are, that you literally forget the body. You know, that you just forget it's even there. One forgets the world, one even forgets one's own body, which is so dear to a man. The master began to sing. Oh Lord, I would have loved to be there right now. Can you imagine him talking about these things? You know that his heart is just pumping in there, and that his face is shining. You know, his eyes are lit up. You know, his smile is so big it's going to just swallow his face. You know, when he talks about these things, just even in a regular mood, how overwhelming. Just imagine him talking about these things after having just said these incredibly beautiful things. And now he's going to sing. You know, what is, oh my God, what an amazing time that must have been just to sit in that room and the master begins to sing. Oh, when will dawn the blessed day when tears of joy will flow from my eyes as I repeat Lord Hari's name? Oh, when will dawn the blessed day when all my craving for the world will vanish straight away from my heart? And with the thrill of his holy name, all of my hair will stand on end. Oh, when will dawn that blessed day? And you know, nobody could sing that like Ramakrishna could sing that. Ramakrishna every day at the end of the day would go roll on the dirt in the yard of the courtyard, saying, "Oh, mother, another day has passed and I have not yet seen you. What is this waste of life? When will I see you?" You know, every day just rolling on the dirt that another day had passed without realization. The intensity of his voice as he sings a song would have been overwhelming, would have been just overwhelming. So the talk of divine things was proceeding when some invited Brahmo devotees entered the room. There were among them a few pundits and high government officials. Sri Ramakrishna had said that bhava stills the nerve currents of the devotee. He continued, when Arjuna was about to shoot at the target, the eye of a fish, his eyes were fixed on the eye of the fish and on nothing else. He didn't even notice any part of the fish except the eye. In such a state, the breathing stops and one experiences this kumbhaka, you know, this divine love, the supreme love. Another characteristic of God vision is that a great spiritual current rushes up along the spine and goes toward the brain. If then the devotee goes into samadhi, he sees God. Looking at the Brahmo devotees who had just arrived, the master said, mere pundits, devoid of divine love, talk incoherently. Pandit Samadhyaye once said in the course of his sermon, God is dry, make him sweet by your love and devotion. Imagine to describe God as dry, whom the Vedas declare as the very essence of bliss. It makes one feel that the pundit didn't know what God really is. That was why his words were so incoherent. Right? God is dry. With your devotion, you have to wet him up. You know, a man once said, "There are many horses in my uncle's cowshed." From that, one could know that the man had no horses at all. No one keeps a horse in a cowshed. Some people pride themselves on their riches and power, their wealth, their honor, their social position. But these are only transitory. Nothing will remain with you in death. There is a song that runs like this. Remember this, O mind, nobody is your own. Vain is your wandering in this world. Trapped in the subtle snare of Maya as you are, do not forget the mother's name. Only a day or two men honor you on earth as Lord and Master. All too soon, that form, so honored now, must needs be cast away when death, the Master, seizes you. Even your beloved wife, for whom while yet you live, you fret yourself almost to death, will not go with you then. She too will say farewell and shun your corpse as an evil thing. And this is Ramakrishna and his discernment. When he discerned, he didn't dress anything up. He looked at it cold and hard and accepted it exactly for what it is. You know, it's like, yes, look at this, stand up, be strong, look the beast in the eye, you know, face the brute, stand up and look at the trouble, look at the nature of this world, and know that it is passing. There is nothing here to be taken. There is nothing here to be desired. You know, let go of all of those ideas and return to the heart, return to the silence of your being, and find peace. One must not be proud of one's money. If you say that you are rich, then one can remind you that there are richer men than you, and others richer still, and so on. At dusk, the glowworm comes out and thinks that it lights the world, but its pride is crushed when the stars appear in the sky. The stars feel that they give light to the earth, but when the moon rises, the stars fade in shame. The moon feels that the world smiles at its light and that it lights the earth. Then the eastern horizon becomes red and the sun rises. The moon fades and after a while is no longer seen. If wealthy people would think that way, they would get rid of their pride in their wealth. Manilal had provided a sumptuous feast in celebration of the festival. He entertained the master with the other guests with great love and with great attention. It was late at night when they returned to their homes. So this is where we'll stop for the night. But this notion of always pointing to the divine, you know, it's why the incarnations very rarely would speak in terms of I. You know, they very well do so. Thakur would always say this place, you know, this pillowcase. Sri Nisargadatta, when asked who he was, he said, this is a place where things happen. That's all. And so there is no sense of I because of this knowledge that everything in this world, in this manifested world, is relative. If you think you're this great, there's always something greater. You know, if you think you're this beautiful, there's always something more beautiful. If you think you're this, you know, whatever it is, you know, every one of us, every generation, as we grow old, every person growing old looks in the mirror at one point and thinks, gosh, I look really good. Maybe I won't age like everybody else ages. I look good for my age. You know, I'm going to look good for my age. And so we hold on to these things. Every one of us thinks, you know, I'm going to work out now and I'm not going to die. Whatever it is. But this is the nature. This is the nature of Maya, that we all somehow will think that we won't die, right? Because we can't imagine that death. Of course, Swami Prabhupada says the reason you can't imagine your death is because you will never die. You have never died, you will never die. You can't think of yourself before birth either because you've never been born. And so this notion. All right.